Shoplifting, maybe not legal, but
morally correct.
I'm going to share in the show notes something from the Anarchist Library. Yes. It's called Why I Love Shoplifting.
Fuck yeah.
And I'm going to read a little quote from it. Shoplifting says no to all the objectionable features that have come to characterize the modern corporation. It is an expression of discontent with I'm going to start off this recording by being very Black Pete-like and saying, I called it. If you guys heard the last episode, I called it. I said Mars-Uranus conjunction last week on Trump's midheaven and Biden's sixth house. And I said Biden was going to get sick and something was going to happen with Trump, and Trump almost got assassinated. And then the same day, basically, Biden got COVID. And it's kind of like right now looking like he might step down. What are you guys thinking?
I have been hearing this too. I've been hearing, I don't know what the evidence is, but hearing that he's more receptive to the possibility of stepping down. I know in public he's still saying, I am in this race, but it makes sense to me that probably the worst thing he can do on a public facing front is we'll see. Yeah. I think that would just undermine everybody's confidence one way or the other. So it makes sense to me that maybe in public he's still like, I'm in, but behind closed doors he might be working on an exit strategy.
And then the issue though is if Biden steps down, all the money that he's earned from donors does not immediately get transferred to whoever takes his place. There's going to have to be a thing. I don't know how it works, honestly. It's going to be a little bit messy, just a tiny bit.
There's no route forward from here that isn't a mess.
Tessa, you're making a lot of faces.
I need to know what planet is responsible for this absolute fucking shit show, man.
The Mars-Uranus conjunction.
I know, but I feel like there's that sort of like in terms of like acute crises, but then just like this absolute global fucking disaster clusterfuck that we find ourselves in.
That's definitely a Plutonian thing. We've completed this Pluto cycle that began when the United States ratified its constitution. And so this goes all the way back to like,
give me 2 seconds, 1788.
Okay, so we're going through this Pluto cycle that began in the 1780s, and Pluto's going to retrograde, going to wrap up some stuff that happened in 1776, and then going to re-hit the part where the U.S. Constitution got ratified in 1788. And we're basically everything that happened in the last 248 years, we are being like, was that a good idea? And hopefully we come to the conclusion that no, it wasn't. America was not a good idea. We should take it back. Yeah. But it's really cool. Also, one, the whole global shutdown that happened with technology, like Y2K happening 24 years late, that was fun. In like a chaotic sort of way. Everyone's going to be like, Harley, you're evil, but like in a chaotic sort of way. I'm like, I love it.
When that happened, my partner was telling me about it, and he was like, yeah, there's some computer update bug or something happened. I think it has to do with Counter-Strike. I think there was like this update to like the video game Counter-Strike or something.
No.
Like, what? And then we looked into it. It's like, oh no, CrowdStrike. Okay, not Counter-Strike.
But it's nice to know that we can shut down the whole economy with a single computer bug. Love to hear that. And we are also recording on Parable of the Sower Day. We have read Octavia Butler's post-apocalyptic dystopian novel, Parable of the Sower, takes place on July 20th, 2024. And we are recording this episode on July 20th, 2024. And I think that's so
very
cool,
fitting,
because we're talking about what we can do to defeat fascism as the fandom. We've accomplished so much with this in this fandom with collective action and organizing, getting people together to put up billboards and things like that. What can we as a fandom do to defeat fascism, which is very real and happening and going to get worse and worse and worse as the months progress, and certainly astrologically into 2025. That's what the astrology says. But before we get into that, let's do our regular thing where we talk about what's the most gay pirate thing that's happened to you this week. Tessa, go.
I was going to hang out with a couple of friends of mine. So I had walked over to their place. It's a heat wave. It's fucking boiling here. It was I think 35 degrees today. I don't know what that is in American, and I refuse to learn. So I had walked over there, and I got to their place, and my friend comes to the door, and she's like, okay, don't look down to the right. So I immediately looked down to the right, and it turns out, so there were a couple of baby magpies that had like literally just come out of the nest that day. When they are first like out of the nest, they can't fly, and they spend like probably a couple of weeks on the ground because sort of like they don't have their tail feathers yet. They don't have sort of like any of the stuff that they need to fly. So they're just these weird little ugly balls of magpie that I love so much. They're so cute. She was concerned because like apparently so her roommate got chased earlier that day for looking at the babies. I do have an established relationship with the magpies in this community. They know me. They're my friends. I parked my bike on their front porch. So it's just like up a few steps and like locked to the slats of the fence there. And so we're hanging out and we decide we're going to go out and smoke a joint in the park. And we come out the front door and my friend says, oh my God, it's on the bike. And let me tell you, it took me a few minutes to realize what she was saying. This baby magpie had hopped all the way up the steps and hopped up onto the spoke of my bike.
Oh,
they're so small and so delicate that we like didn't want to hurt it. And we were worried that like, cause, you know, if you're sort of like putting your hand over top of it and it's struggling, it might like break a bone or something. Or
yeah.
like, oh God. And at first I sort of like take sort of like a piece of newspaper and I'm like trying to shoo this baby magpie off the spoke and into this box. The thing is, he has his little claws locked in the spoke of my bike. She just manages to like get him to like let his little feet go, and he ends up in the box. And I'm immediately like, oh shit, because now I've got a shoebox with a baby magpie in it, and he's not happy. And so he starts flapping his little wings, and I'm like, oh fuck. Is he, because like I don't want him to fall. And so I get down the steps, I put this box down like right next to the tree where his sibling is asleep, and I back off, and he once again just immediately goes back to sleep. And so yeah, and that was it. Sam and I just like high five.
And he got like reunited with his family with his
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Because his sibling was just like completely asleep, like in the bole of this tree. So like we set him down, he was just like directly next to his sibling. And so, and then the next day they sort of like checked and both the siblings were hanging out like beside the box.
Oh God. That reminds me of a crow I found over by Warner Brothers studio that definitely needed help, was injured. And so I was on my bike as well. So I'm like, okay, injured crow, all I have is a bike. Well, it's going to go in my bra. And so I stuffed it in my bra inside my cleavage. And it made me realize there are so many species of animals who have been inside my cleavage. I've had baby skunks, baby raccoons, baby possums, baby chicks.
Nature's pocket.
Yeah. Chloe, what's your gay pirate story?
Mine is a lot more of an adventure of the mind. Bear with me. Several months ago, I read a book called Being Animal, and I really enjoyed it. And it was about kind of our relationship as humans to the animal world, but less literally and more kind of how we conceptualize our relationship to animals, and like how, especially sort of post-Enlightenment Western society, we tend to have narratives around like overcoming animal instincts and being sort of more, you know, higher order thinking, blah, blah, blah. And also how language around animals tends to be used, well, speaking of the Fighting Fascism episode, to, you know, denigrate certain groups of people by making comparisons to animals. And so the book was really about kind of challenging our broad social narratives around like humans versus animals. And obviously by animals, I mean non-human animals. But I really enjoyed that book, and that had been kind of percolating in my mind. And now one of the books I'm reading is Understanding Your Mind by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist philosopher. And I still have a long way to go in kind of my own meditation practice and kind of understanding a lot of the things that he is writing. But he's been writing in the chapters I've been reading about practicing meditation and mindfulness to be better able to sort of stop making artificial distinctions between things like self and other and this part of the world versus that part of the world, and recognize that sort of everything's connected, because our conscious mind is very designed to be discriminatory between things, draw lines and help categorize things as a way to help understand, make sense of the world. And there's merit to that, but then we also use it to really draw lines that aren't there between ourselves and other people and ourselves and other aspects of the world. And part of this practice of meditation is really recognizing the reality for what it is with all of this interconnectedness. And in reading that last night, actually, I was starting to go down this rabbit hole that I want to keep exploring in my mind. I was thinking, I wonder to what extent this kind of meditation practice and this Buddhist philosophy is practicing thinking more like an animal thinks, and not this sort of conscious discriminatory this versus that type thinking, and being more present in the moment, thinking less about distinctions between birth and death, and being more, seeing more how everything is connected. It's like, I wonder if this is kind of what our language about consciousness in animals might call sort of becoming less conscious, but in a way that is more aligned with reality and better allows us to connect with all things. So I really want to continue thinking down that road and see. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, if there is something to this, I wonder if this is what Buttons was going for. If this is the consciousness that Buttons is trying to achieve by turning into a seagull, and that the limit of how he could love the sea with his human consciousness had to do with these lines that we draw between ourselves and other things. And if by entering the consciousness of an animal, of a seagull, he can truly be one with the sea. And if this is what Buttons is all about.
Wow. Yeah. At first, I wasn't sure where you were going with the story.
I know.
Okay. That
sounds like, I know you got to bear with me here, but like, I think this is, I feel like I really want to talk to Buttons now.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of this, Buttons? Can we talk about this?
I feel like I want to do mushrooms with Buttons.
I would love to do mushrooms with Buttons. Right? That would be a transformative.
Well, if you're into a little hallucinogenic sort of fiction, fanfic, my fic, Many Flags, So Much Death, deals with Buttons and a hallucinogenic drink that Steed accidentally drinks too much of, and a spiritual journey that kind of goes into some of that, but so I'll shout that out.
Sounds amazing.
But that, yeah, maybe we all need to do some ayahuasca before 2025. Maybe that's the best way that we can defeat fascism, is by
I the last time, so I was in Boston in October because I was doing some interviews at sort of this facility, and afterwards my colleague and I, we went to get a drink, and we ended up sitting next to this woman who somehow we ended up in an extended conversation with her about sort of both the political state of the United States and ayahuasca, which she recommended, but she recommended it for sort of like very much as not a fun experience, but as an experience that has the potential to reveal to you the places where you are stuck, and an experience where you often sort of come to realize, okay, this moment in my life, this experience that I had, I'm still there. I'm still trapped in that, and I have to kind of let that go. And so, yeah, I'm very, very interested in trying some ayahuasca, actually.
As am I.
Fascinating, because that's a big thing that astrology says. If we keep on repeating the same cycles over and over again, and I wonder if ayahuasca can speed up that. I mean, I think astrology, being aware of it, helps speed that up, but also like, baby, that experience. Now I want to drink ayahuasca. I was scared for a long time of like, ooh, everyone's doing this and it's having really great experiences, but it's scary. Like,
I was very hesitant about hallucinogenics until I was in my early 30s, because I think we're all sort of raised, or we have all been raised sort of in a context where there is a lot of propaganda around those things, suggesting that like you're just going to go instantly insane, which is bullshit.
Which is why does that propaganda exist in the first place?
The CIA. I have, but genuinely, like that. There's a huge there was like a huge push in like the 50s, 60s, 70s to sort of make this a very frightening thing and to frame it as something that is terribly threatening. And yeah, I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that, you know, they did not want to see a meaningful cultural shift, which is not to say that hallucinogenics would have been sort of like uniquely sort of like responsible for that kind of cultural shift. But like, it is interesting that something that certainly I have experienced as a thing that can open you up to engaging with the reality of a situation in a way that you might otherwise not let yourself. It's interesting that that is something that they went so far out of their way to make a very sort of frightening and very threatening thing.
And a lot of
and also
of oppression are rooted in traditional, like marriage, traditional family structures, and people who do hallucinogenics and open their mind realize, oh wow, these traditional family structures that are maybe very beneficial to capitalism are not beneficial to the individual or to the collective humanity, that maybe we should break free of those. And so of course the conservative capitalist mindset is like, no, don't open your mind, don't get educated, don't learn about healthy ways of being, fit into this, you know, 2-parent, 2 children, you know, nuclear family union that is the most beneficial to Cargill.
Yeah, and you know, since this is the Fighting Fascism episode, I do think with a lot of hallucinogenic experiences, a pretty common theme that people talk about is increased sense of empathy and spiritual awakening and connection between things. And a lot of oppressive regimes really rely on dividing people and making people feel under threat from others. That is very much a method of control. So they wouldn't want people seeing through that either.
And genocide is an important tactic of that system, and we will not tolerate genocide if we have empathy. Okay, so let's get into the main crux of the thing. What fascism is happening right now? What are you guys seeing? What are the terrible things? Let's describe the problem first.
So, I mean, I think we've seen for a number of years globally the rise of this kind of like very powerful alt-right contingent, and that involves sort of like both the elevation of, you know, figures like Trump, who sort of like are setting themselves up, certainly, you know, in the case of stacking the Supreme Court with justices who will make these horrific decisions that we've seen so much of in the past few weeks, and
that give him power.
Yeah, exactly, and who will, you know, make decisions based on like, you know, the claim that a president cannot be held accountable for official acts, whatever the fuck that means. And like that
can mean anything. That's the problem.
Dictatorship.
That's yes. Yeah, no, that is you are laying the groundwork very deliberately for someone to grasp hold of the power and to refuse to let it go. I do also think that fascism emerges and has emerged every time from a crisis of capitalism. And that is very much what we have seen in recent years, where I think all of us are more and more under pressure, and this system is more and more showing that it simply cannot function. And capitalism and fascism are, for me, you cannot sort of extract one from the other. You cannot have fascism without capitalism. And yeah, I think that is a large part of what we're seeing now. And I mean, also key here is white supremacy and the kind of attacks on the queer community that we have seen recently, especially our trans siblings. All of these things are so classically fascist.
It's a system like you might see in your families too, where if you have an authoritarian parent figure, they will pick a scapegoat, or in our larger social system, the scapegoats are the trans people. It's like, why they're literally doing nothing wrong, just existing as their authentic self.
And it's because they are the most vulnerable.
Yeah,
they choose the most vulnerable, and they choose the groups that are least well understood, because you can start there and you can build that paranoia and that fear and create an enemy so that the people who you have pointed at that enemy will be too distracted, losing their minds over that, to notice as you strip away all of their rights, as you strip away all of the things that make this, not a fascist regime. And I mean,
trans people are also living authentically, which is also being authentic is very threatening to the fascist regime.
Yeah. And I think, and white supremacy is very much key here as well. And that is something, that has been unfortunately built in to the United States and built in to some extent here as well, to some large extent here. I mean, it's built in globally, but in the United States in particular, I think it is being used very effectively to separate especially the working class from their actual interests. If you can convince white working class people that their enemy is black working class people and not, the bastards who are in control of everything, then you can just hold on to that power.
Please have a culture war, not a class war.
Yeah, exactly. Hate
those
your
actions too. They mask the fact that all systems of oppression are interconnected.
Yeah,
and that if you start to address one, you can dismantle them all. But if you maintain infighting, then exactly like you were saying, you prevent people from actually pulling out the Jenga block at the bottom that makes it all fall.
Exactly.
The other thing I would add to the threat of fascism, I agree with everything you said, like the fear-mongering, scapegoating, the concentration of power with an increasingly few number of individuals, the power of money. The one that almost scares me the most, because if fascists get control of this one, there's not much hope for any of the others, and that's the control of truth and reality. And I think that's been underway for a very, very long time, starting with like fake news and now with like AI and deep fakes. I think it's even more frightening, because if you can't figure out what's true, there's very little hope for addressing any of these problems. And I think it's a tactic to sow seeds of doubt
which is what narcissists do so well in family structures, is the gaslighting. And so we're seeing gaslighting from the larger social structure.
Undermining intellectual authorities, sowing like anti-intellectualism, same people who like actually study phenomena deeply are elitist and out of touch with reality, even if they might have valuable insights to add. And saying, even if you are capable of finding a truth, perpetuating the narrative that like, well, that doesn't really matter, it's more what people feel, or like that this eroding of like the power of reality and facts and data and truths to make a difference is extremely concerning.
Yeah, I think, sorry, my brain just stopped, let me reboot. But yeah, I think that like one of the really key things to keep in mind is that we are all incredibly vulnerable to propaganda. I think it's very easy, for example, point to boomers on Facebook and sort of like point out to like where they're falling prey to propaganda, and they are. But I think it's important also to note that we are all incredibly vulnerable to propaganda. It doesn't matter how old you are. There's propaganda all over TikTok. There's, I remember a couple of semesters ago talking to a student of mine. I loved this kid. He came into class, and I at first I was just like, this is a very normal young white straight dude. He's got his like ball cap with his hockey team and everything. And at one point we were talking about, the TikTok algorithm and how this works. And he raises his hand and he's like, yeah, like, when I'm trying to watch videos about hockey, it keeps like giving me all this alt-right shit, man. And like, I just want to watch hockey. I'm not a fucking fascist. I love you. This is what happens. You try to engage with, something perfectly innocent, like, watching some fucking hockey videos, and all of a sudden it's trying to radicalize you into the fucking alt-right, man.
And I want to connect this to Our Flag Means Death, too. But there are microcosms of this, too, with the cancellation of like this sort of behind the scenes power manipulations that are supposedly like, business, and then bullshit reasons why this decision was made to cancel the show. The numbers aren't there. Oh, we're worried about violence and the advertising, like all the other bullshit. And this kind of attempt to control the narrative, but really it's just money and power and targeting the vulnerable first.
And the creation of a kind of
shows.
monoculture. The creation of a kind of monoculture where you are more and more limited as to the kind of media that you can create and the kind of media that will be supported and will succeed. And it turns out that that's all going to be sort of, you know, the next dozen Marvel movies and
it's
whatever
also
other
reality drivel that allows lots of advertising opportunities.
Yes. And 3
and
Harry
entertainment
Potter
that
spin-offs.
is manipulation of yeah.
Yeah.
So a real disconnect there between what people actually want and what empowers people. Seeing themselves in TV shows, seeing narratives, help them see behind the curtain. Those are getting nixed, and that's not a coincidence.
And an increasingly limited range of people being allowed to actually create art, and certainly being allowed to create art in a way where that can just be the thing that they do, and where it can actually reach a wide audience. You know, we don't see the creation of sort of smaller scale kind of art that we used to see and that we used to be able to have access to. Like, people are still making art and people will continue to make art, but it is harder and harder to actually, I think,
reach audiences.
Exactly. Because if you're not just a giant fucking monster corporation.
The consolidation of media conglomerates has really limited the type of storytelling that can get out there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Monopoly, man.
So I asked you guys to bring in 5 ways that you think we can fight fascism. And I want to change the word fight fascism to defeat fascism. Because fight means that, you know, we give it our best shot. Defeat means we actually win.
Yes.
And I do think it is possible to win. So what are 5 ways to defeat fascism?
I did actually write a list. I can
go through your list.
High level and then dive in, or like take one at a time.
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay. Well, my top one I think was also your top one, Tessa, and that's community.
Okay, good, because I definitely had follow-up questions to this. What does building community look like? What does that mean on like an individual level? Go.
I think it's the fandom has been doing a really good job of it. I think as a sort of example of what that can look like, and that is organizing collective action to push back against false narratives. And I'm kind of using this as an example in a relatively smaller scale of the fandom's campaign to save the show and fight Warner Brothers, defeat Warner Brothers, about, you know, the organizing the billboard and getting hashtag streaming and things like that. So just collective action that gets noticed and garners momentum just out of volume, and getting a community involved in that sort of action, I think can start making a difference. But also when I think of community, I think of having a network of people who are all in different professions in different parts of the country or the world, who kind of can have access to different tools and different weapons to spread information, to find resources, and taking this back up to a more defeating fascism on a national level kind of scale. I mean, that's access to a network of people who, if you need an abortion, can help you get an abortion or something like that. Just everybody who has all these different connections, some of them that may end up having to be really underground, to help you find resources, information that people need, that the powers up top might be otherwise trying to hide.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm thinking of fandom in this context as a kind of resource. So in terms of building community, I was thinking very much about fandom as a resource to help organize. And so that is a resource that you can reach out to, because fandoms create this kind of very diverse, very widespread network. So I think that, you know, if you need help figuring out how to arrange a protest, there's probably somebody in the fandom who has done a lot of that. You can find someone, you can talk to someone, you can talk to a lot of people who have been engaged in that kind of organizing work. If you want to figure out how to unionize your workplace, there's probably somebody in the fandom who's done that. You know, reach out to these networks and figure out how you can organize, like, not just online, but in your city and in the context of like the space that you are in. Yeah, organize, I would say. Just
Have either of you seen the Netflix docuseries The Family?
No.
Everyone should watch it. It's about this Christian group that basically they kind of like collect young, politically active, like just out of college people. And they're like, you will live in our little apartments in DC that we set up, and we will help you meet people. And all you have to do is kind of join our church and kind of participate in our religious activity. And it's this group that's been going on for decades, and they've infiltrated every single part of government, public policy. The group has no official leader, and that's what makes it so effective, because you can't point to a figurehead and go, it's that person, they're the problem. And like a lot of senators, a lot of congressmen, they all are connected with this family. And I'm like, okay, this is terrible. But what if we did this, but for good? Instead of for Christian,
I think that's the difference between community and a cult.
Yeah. It's like, our flag means death is the thing that connects us. Like that group, the thing that connects them is Christianity and Jesus. But they use it to acquire power, acquire connections.
Control people.
Yeah, and all of that. Our connection is our flag means death. We are drawn to it because it's good. It's a good, positive. We love the thing. But basically, everyone who is a fan of our flag means death, we know they're a good person. Stop infighting people. Stop fighting amongst yourselves. Just let it go. We're all in this together.
This is what we were talking about. It behooves the powers to get people fighting amongst each other and not fighting the larger problem, getting distracted by infighting, by us versus them within a community weakens everything.
And it's not really the larger problem. The people who are in power are the minority, and we, all of us, are the majority. So if we just stop infighting and we unify, we get all together, we have the numbers. They might have the access to the wealth, but there's more of us than them. We could defeat them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think like within a community, it's important to approach each other with a kind of gentleness and an assumption that we are acting in good faith. Yeah.
And let people be clumsy. Steed is clumsy.
Yes.
And we love him anyway. So if you see someone in the fandom who clearly has mental illness or who is clumsy and who is not being correct on social media, don't attack them. Just be like, just let them do their thing. And
we're all awkward weirdos. We're all awkward weirdos.
I think a good thing to remember in the spirit of that, of giving people grace while also organizing collective action to fight fascism, is to remember that one of the biggest sort of, what am I trying to say? Biggest boost you can give to something is your attention. And that can go into a productive direction or an unproductive direction. And with infighting in a fandom, for instance, it is very unproductive, in my opinion, when there's a really like batshit problematic take or something someone says, and that is given a tremendous amount of attention, and we all get really hung up focusing on that. Ignore it. Yes, I think there is a place for calling shit out of like, this is not okay, but call it out and then move on. Don't get hung up on it.
We don't need to like signal boost every fucking bad take.
Yes, and that again, that distracts that attention away from the kind of bigger problem that we're trying to work towards solving, and the joy of what we're trying to do and the momentum we're trying to garner. So I think this is actually on my list as well. It's all interconnected. So we've already at least indirectly talked about everything on my list. But one of the things is being very discriminating with your attention and wrestling back control of your attention. And I think that's something that weakens these sort of grassroots community movements as well. This dividing and distraction of attention, social media very much weakens attention, and it makes it harder for us to like read long form complex articles, to think more critically about things, because we are sort of more drawn towards like that kind of next dopamine hit of information. And I've very much noticed this in myself, a weakening of my own attention span that undermines my ability to engage critically with information that I need to engage with. And that's been something I am really trying to work on. And so I think it's in fascism's interest to have people distracted by the sort of dopamine machine and trying to get that attention fixed. But if we can wrestle back control over our attention and where we put our energy, we can have tremendous power.
It's tough because social media can be a great tool for getting messages out there and organizing, but it can also be such a suck of, my attention span has definitely decreased in the last
it's so hard, but it is a incredibly powerful tool, and that's something that fascism tries to do as well, shut down these social media outlets of communication. And I think the key is not using them, but using them intentionally and sort of with more mental control. But it's hard.
And I know you have to go soon, so I'll let you go through your list.
I can stay probably till like quarter after.
Okay, we'll try and be snappy and quick. What's third on your list?
Comedy.
Yay!
I think comedy. Yes, and this is like a Charlie Chaplin Hitler kind of thing too. Comedy weakens power when used really effectively, and comedy can help take control of a narrative that maybe you might have an oppressive regime that's trying to perpetuate one narrative, and comedy can take it and say like, look how fucking ridiculous this is. We've talked about this in the group chat, but the movie The Death of Stalin is an incredible example of that. You should watch it if you haven't. It's about the it's a satire, but very based in the reality of what happened. It's very dark humor. The mad scramble for power after Stalin died, and all of the players in there, and the grab for power revealing just how broken and oppressive this system is. But it's wildly entertaining. It's hilarious in a really dark way, but the portrayal of this very accurate story in this satirical way makes you, as an audience member, watch it and go like, oh my God, wow, this is fucked up. And to have that awareness is key.
Definitely.
To see what's happening. And I think you could broaden it beyond just comedy too. I think comedy is extremely effective for this, but a lot of entertainment forms can do this. And I think it's something fandom communities are really good at doing too, like making our own narratives and kind of taking creative control over something. But I think comedy is important, and that's another thing to watch out for. As soon as like a government starts shutting down comedy and satire, you're in the danger zone.
And I've also found that being involved in a lot of different movements, when there is a movement that is super serious about itself and takes itself really serious, I'm talking about the animal rights movement. You people know who you are. The animal rights movement, they do not know how to laugh at themselves. And it makes them come across as extremely, you know how the animal movement is perceived. You have to laugh at yourself, be able to laugh at yourself, you be able to make humor about yourself, because it makes you relatable. Because when you talk about how cringe you are and you make fun of what's happening in the movement, you're not weakening your movement. You are letting others know that you see yourself and that you're being authentic. I'm going to read the bell hooks quote since no one has read it yet.
Please.
We cannot have a meaningful revolution without humor. Every time we see the left or any group trying to move forward politically in a radical way, when they're humorless, they fail. That's from Bell Hooks.
Absolutely. I think it's both essential sort of within a movement, because like, man, you cannot live on just like activism alone. If you can't sort of like have that real like release that comes with just like laughing at the complete absurdity of everything. I mean, like, I kind of go through life constantly laughing at everything that's happening, because like, even when shit is really serious, there is no situation that is so serious that it isn't on some level fucking hilarious. Certainly not things that happen to me. It's like, it's all so fucking stupid, and if you can't laugh at it, man, you're gonna be exhausted. And on top of that, sort of like, when it comes to sort of things, you know, within a movement, yes, we have to be able to laugh at ourselves. Yes, we have to be able to recognize when, you know, things that are happening, maybe, you know, bad or good or whatever, but also fundamentally absurd, is also a hell of a weapon. You know, somebody like fucking Trump, stand to be laughed at.
Yeah. Narcissists hate when you make fun of them.
Yeah, yeah. And they're just, and that makes it even better, because my God, what an absurd, pathetic little man.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic weapon, and we need to be using all of the weapons at our disposal.
To expand a bit on comedy, I think sort of peripheral to the power of comedy is the power of cringe that we have talked a lot about on this podcast and in the context of Our Flag Means Death and the people involved in it, because there's a lot of cringe, but the cringe sets you free. And when you are comfortable with cringe, you are less afraid to make mistakes and potentially make a fool out of yourself in a system that expects you to be one way. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's an empowering thing. People who aren't afraid to make mistakes and aren't afraid of what they look like are incredibly powerful people, because that holds people back.
Yeah, that reminds me of, so I was working on a campaign last year, and someone did a television interview, and she afterwards, she was so nervous that she said the wrong thing. She was like, just heartbroken about it. And I gave her a call, and I'm like, there are people out here who are saying the wrong thing with their whole chest, going out there on social media and TikTok. You flubbed it a little bit. You maybe didn't say the exact perfect thing, but your overall energy, and that you've been out here every single day working on this thing, that's what's important. So don't worry about saying a little thing wrong, or, you know, that you're going to ruin the whole campaign because you didn't quite get it right. We're up against people who are saying the wrong thing loudly and repeatedly. So anyway,
I think this is another key, I think, within a movement, because there are always going to be people who don't have like the exact language. There are always going to be people who misspeak, or who are sort of coming from a context where, you know, they don't have all of the education on like the exact right current way to say something. And this is one of the spaces where we really do need to be generous with each other.
Exactly.
Like, you know, there's a tension, I think, because, you know, we can talk about the fact that like intention is not effect, and effect does matter, but intention matters too. And when we have somebody who sort of like is genuinely trying, and who is maybe sort of not using the exact right words, man, for me at least, the fact that they're fucking trying matters a hell of a lot more than the fact that they don't have the perfect words.
Perfect. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well done. What are we on for you, Chloe? Number 5 or number 4?
I have sort of lost track, but I think I have 2 more, but we've kind of already hit on them. One is sort of a subset of community, and that's a lot more direct interpersonal interaction. I think supports community, but also helps break down assumptions about others, exposes you to more types of people. And I think that the internet is really powerful for connecting with people we might not otherwise be able to connect with because they're on the other side of the world, or we're just like, our social paths wouldn't cross otherwise. But as much as possible, it is still important, I think, to balance that within what's reasonable in an individual's life to really interface with people directly. And I think that builds empathy as well, which is another really important tool. Comedy, cringe, and empathy are powerful people. And the last thing I think about that I put on my list is also related to community and having this network of people who might have connections to information or resources, like you were saying, Tessa, about someone who maybe is really good at union organizing. And so I think another important thing to think about is what you as an individual might be able to offer that community or what role you can play. And I think about that with the sort of caveat of like, your worth is not dependent on the value that you offer. And sometimes it is just being another number in this collective.
Yeah, everyone has skills that they can lend. Like you might be a writer, you might be a graphic designer, you might be really good at organizing, really good at spreadsheets, data, statistics, analysis and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But also if you can just be a body that shows up at the protests, that is huge too. Every Wednesday, my local Burbank for Palestine group has a little demonstration outside of Adam Schiff's office. And it really does make a difference when there's a big group of people just standing there with signs. And
and when we're trying to, in the fandom, when we're trying to get something like Fire David Zaslav or Don't Stream on Max trending, every one tweet that includes that hashtag helps get that trending. So nobody has nothing to offer in these efforts.
Cool. Great list. Is that your list?
That's my list.
Yay! Tessa, what is your list of 5 things?
Okay. I'm just gonna go through these really quickly because a lot of them we've sort of like covered to some extent already. I mean, first obviously was organize, reach out to other people in the fandom to help you figure out how to do that, to help you figure out how to set up the protest, to help you figure out how to get a union started. Use those resources that are available to you because you have this incredibly widespread network. Talk to people about what's happening in the world. Talk to people about what's happening in your community. Talk to people about, the fact that, the global rise of fascism is real, about the fact that this is happening, that it's frightening. Spread that awareness. Again, because we have this incredibly diverse and widespread network within the fandom, we have such a platform to spread that awareness and to spread that engagement. And, just as we were just saying, get out there, go to the protest. And this obviously, depends on sort of your capacity and, what you can do. But insofar as you are able to do that, go to the protest, go to the union meeting, get involved on the ground as well as online. If you're living in a big city in the States, there might be sort of other people within the fandom who, if you don't have anybody to go to the protest with, maybe there's somebody who will be like, yeah, let's go, let's get out there and represent for the fandom and just, for our community. Push back when you see the beginnings of fascist radicalization in friends and family members. I have a friend who I love who has been being sucked into the alt-right for the past couple of years, and it's scary as hell. But I am at this point, I think, the only person in our original friend group who still talks to him. And I will, when I am in the same city as him, I will sit with him and I will talk for 4 hours or 5 hours, just sort of like trying to talk him through this stuff. I don't know if it's ever going to work.
That can make a difference. I was just listening to a podcast episode with white supremacist, and having someone talk him through his reasoning changed him. So
this is exactly it. It's like, I don't know if this is ever going to work. I don't know if I'm ever going to pull him out of it. But I do know that if he has doubts, when he has sort of moments of like, oh shit, maybe this isn't right, I will still be a person who he knows he can reach out to. So that helps to combat the kind of isolation that can further entrench that kind of radicalization. And again, that's something that, it depends on your comfort. It depends on your safety. This is, he's not a person who I am ever scared of or, who I ever feel threatened by. It's just me sitting with him being like, listen to me, you big gay idiot. They'll fucking kill you.
Oh, and he's gay too. What are you doing?
Artist, what is he doing? Oh God. But and this is sort of, I think he sort of got sucked in, starting sort of with the kind of anti-vax bullshit, which I think is an entry point, unfortunately, for a lot of people.
Yeah, the spiritual community kind of like got into the anti-vax, and then like the alt-right like sucked in the tarot readers and the
it's fucking wild, but it's there's a real pipeline there. And so push back where you can and have those conversations. And you don't have to do that every time, and you don't have to do that with every person. But if there's somebody you love and you see this happening to them, and you have the energy and you have the capacity to talk to them, do it. Be that lifeline so that there's something for them to grab if they ever sort of actually surface. And I mean, the fifth one is not so much sort of an action as it is just do it now. Don't wait. The longer we wait, the more entrenched this shit becomes. It's already so entrenched, and it's already really fucking frightening. And we need to be fighting back now. Yeah, you know, we're pirates. Don't fucking leave your comrades hanging. Get out there, fuck the man, fight authority.
Yep, take to the high seas.
Yeah, no, exactly. Come on, let's do this. And yeah, that's it for me on that. Yeah.
My list includes a few not quite legal things, but I'm putting them there anyway. So
we're pirates.
We're pirates. This is what we're doing. What we do. So boycott, perfectly legal. General strike, perfectly legal. Shoplifting, maybe not legal, but
morally correct.
I'm going to share in the show notes something from the Anarchist Library. Yes. It's called Why I Love Shoplifting.
Fuck yeah.
And I'm going to read a little quote from it. Shoplifting is a refusal of the exchange economy. It is a denial that people deserve to eat, live, and die based on how effectively they are able to exchange their labor and capital with others. Shoplifting says no to all the objectionable features that have come to characterize the modern corporation. It is an expression of discontent with the low wages and lack of benefits that so many exploiting corporations force their employees to suffer in the name of company profits. So
that reminds me of quotes I've seen. This was mainly during the sort of shortage of baby formula, but things like, if you see someone stealing baby formula.
No, you didn't.
So also vandalizing, wheat pasting. If you're good at graphic design, if you're good at slogans, you can wheat paste and sticker bomb your local heavily pedestrianized, what's the word I'm looking for? Pedestrian areas of your local metropolitan area that has a lot of upscale foot traffic, because those people are probably not seeing your tweets and your Instagram posts, but you can get them at the intersections of crosswalks with your message. And trespass, investigate if you are into that sort of thing with your drone cameras, and reveal and expose the terrible things that are happening in various factories and agricultural places. Disrupt, protest, boycott, general strike, rent strike. Get your tenants together, do a rent strike.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think, man, a general strike. Fucking loved. Please.
7 days of a general strike, we could change everything.
Yeah, for real. Seriously.
And boycotts work. Like there was
hell yes.
There was like a recent thing, like McDonald's lost $7 billion in something amount of time because of a boycott. So we can do this. So Tessa, do you have any media books that you think we should check out?
I always recommend David Harvey, again, sort of like for sort of just an understanding of neoliberalism, which I think is just inextricably connected to the rise of fascism. So yeah, definitely Harvey. If you're interested in the sort of the kind of wellness to alt-right pipeline, the podcast Maintenance Phase has an episode called exactly that. It's the wellness to alt-right pipeline. I highly recommend. I mean, I recommend that entire podcast, but it's a really good entry point for sort of understanding how that kind of radicalization happens and how you can go from sort of like, I don't know, a general interest in health and yoga and whatever to suddenly
conspiracy
theories and fucking QAnon bullshit and all of it. Yeah, so I highly recommend that.
Absolutely, Timothy Snyder. I said I was going to bring up Timothy Snyder, and I have to. He is a 20th century historian who is an expert on the rise of fascism in Europe in the 20th century in lots of contexts. Anything he writes, any interviews he's done, watch, but a key resource is his book, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. It's short, it's fast. It is basically what we have just been talking about. It is a list of 20 things that are common features that he has identified from his study of the history of fascist movements in the 20th century and lessons from those about what to do, how to recognize what's happening, how to fight back. You can read it in an hour. It's required reading for any of this. So please read that and anything else by Timothy Snyder.
I do also have a fan fiction recommendation.
Yes, good. Yes, drop it. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I was wondering if we get any fan fiction recommendations, but
I do have one. Like, this is sort of like it's loosely connected, but it's political. It's called "Push My Buttons, Get Me Started" by Wishing on a Lightning Bolt, and it is about Izzy is a chief political strategist for the Green Party, and Steed is sort of a strategist for Labour. And they're like on sort of a morning sort of political talk show together. And it's got everything. It's got Olu as a talk show host.
Wow.
It's got Nigel Badminton as this asshole fucking Tory strategist.
Oh wow.
It's got Steed and Izzy just like fighting, and Izzy being like, "I hate this motherfucker," and Steed being like, "I'm hitting on you."
I love that.
It's so great. It's so great. And it's like, so it's Steed kind of being very into Izzy and Izzy being very Izzy about it. And
I love that.
Sort of ending up on a date anyway. And it's great. It's actually, there's a second part to it. So it's part of this 2-part series called Heartbreak Feels So Good. And it's great. So they're both just sort of in politics, and Izzy is very much like the sort of old guard kind of political socialist, and sort of very, very, engaged and tough and angry. And I love it.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah,
cool.
That was my first thought when we were talking about it last night. I was like, wait, Izzy's a political strategist.
Awesome. I love that. I'm going to check that out. Anything else?
Oh, God, not that comes to mind right now. My brain is fried, man.
So I'm going to drop in the show notes this essay on why I love shoplifting on the anarchistlibrary.org.
Hell yes.
Also, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And also, I think cults and America, if you want to understand America, you have to understand cults, because America is a cult. And so I listen to a lot of cult podcasts. I really like the Trust Me podcast because it is hosted by people who were in a cult, and they're interviewing other people about cults. And so when you understand cults, you understand narcissism, you understand harmful family dynamics. Understanding how these systems work on like an interpersonal level is really important. And then there's so many things on narcissism, but learn everything that you can on narcissism, because that will help you as well. And hopefully identify the narcissists in your life so that you can heal yourself, and then you'll be able to heal the rest of the world. So without further ado, have fun out there defeating fascism. Join us in defeating fascism. You can DM us anytime if you need more advice on how to defeat fascism in your area. I'm doing fascism defeating things this weekend that are kind of secret, but I'm trying to make a point to do a little something, maybe twice a week. I'm like a rogue cell that goes out there and does stuff. And if you are interested in our flag related memes and other hilarity, follow us on Instagram at Our Flag Means Fanfiction, all one word. Bye.